But they are being sent out by the National Committee.
They are.
Thank you.
Okay. In the Q&A, I have a non-privileged motion. Florida Delegate Denise Rayburn is having an issue logging in. Someone has, all right, so we got that taken care of. Have Alabama Delegate Garrett Cotter. Mr. Cotter, I need to allow you to talk. Go ahead. Alabama Delegate Garrett Cotter.
Yes, I just had a question about the what is going on tonight and how this is going to work on the day of the convention, because what I'm seeing right now is that we're all communicating with you, and a lot of people in my state are confused about what's going on with this online convention, and we're worried that we're not going to be able to get our delegates are not going to be able to cast their votes correctly. And I'm sitting here on this call now, and it doesn't seem very organized towards the delegation. So if you could clear that up and explain.
I can clear that up, Mr. Cotter. At a physical convention, you only get to speak when you're recognized by the chair. I've recognized you and you get to speak. For voting, voting is done at a convention through your delegation chair, and your delegation chair will handle your voting in whatever way your delegation chooses. Oklahoma Delegate Chad Williams.
I'm the delegation chair.
Oh, and now can we make sure Mr. Williams is promoted to delegation chair? Massachusetts Delegate Peter Everett.
Hi,
This
is
Go
Peter
ahead,
Everett.
Dr. Everett.
I'm not the delegation chair. I'm calling to raising my hand to ask some questions. You have been referring to items in the question and answer column for privileged motions that I cannot see. Do I see a different question and answer list from the ones that everyone else sees?
Yes, so attendees do not see the question and answer list, but attendees can put in a privileged motion in the question and answer list, and I will acknowledge those before we move through the normal order of business with the hands that are raised.
Because what I see in question and answer right now is something from Christopher Weiss, a response to the question from Elijah Boyd, something from
Yes,
Mitchell
you see a lot of
Wycheck,
things.
and then
yeah,
your response, and then
ignore
that's it. That's all I see. I don't see some of the other
Yes.
things you're referring to. Okay. Concerns about.
Okay. Louisiana Delegate Keith Thompson raises a point of personal privilege on behalf of the chair and the vice chair from Louisiana who are apparently unable to get in. The staff member can help Mr. Craig and Mr. Dodd and verify that they did get their email to get into the meeting tonight. Washington Delegate Miguel Duque is going to be the delegation chair for the evening because their normal delegation chair, Ms. De Leon, is not able to be here tonight. So Washington Delegate Miguel Duque. Mr. Vogt, your microphone will not work until I let it work. California Delegate June Jenis.
A couple of things. First, something I brought up in a previous test, which I thought had been resolved, but apparently not, is that unless I click on the caret next to the microphone, I don't see the bottom bar that goes from settings to lead. Apparently that's controlled by something in the settings somewhere, And I thought that it was going to be changed so the default was that you would see that bar, because when I click on the caret, it brings up a menu which blocks part of the screen, which is less than ideal. The other thing is, who is getting invitations? Who are getting invitations at this point? Is everyone supposed to be invited to every test, or are you trying to subset it? Because I seem to be getting some and not all of the test requests.
Every delegate who is in the credentials database and every alternate in the credentials database is receiving an invitation to their email.
Okay, I heard that there is another test scheduled this weekend, and I have not gotten that.
And
Is
you
that-
won't get it until after this one's over.
Okay.
Okay.
What about
Ms. Janice, is there any other thing that you had while you're recognized?
I was unmuted. I was muted, so I had to unmute again. Yeah, I just wanted to see if there was a response on the business about getting the bar to stick so that I can always see whether I've got my hand lowered or up. Because unless I do that, I don't know if I've left it up when I shouldn't have or not.
I don't have a good response for you on that. New Jersey Delegate Richard Edgar.
Yes, I'm a delegation chair for New Jersey.
All right, if someone can promote Mr. Edgar to
And-
being a delegation chair, go ahead.
And we do have one person who claims he's registered but didn't get the email. There's probably nothing you can do about it right now, but I don't know. We should just think about sending the emails plenty of time in advance so I can try and go through.
They went out early
They went out
today.
yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's just something to make sure that his email address is in the database properly and that he has whitelisted lp.org. Arkansas Delegate Michael Pacco. Go ahead, Dr. Pacco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I simply seek to be recognized as the delegation chair from Arkansas.
All right, so Mr. Edgar and Mr. Pacco, or Dr. Pacco, both need to be delegation chairs. Idaho Delegate Sean Luoma. You can unmute yourself, Mr. Luoma.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair, I would like to lay something on the table if that is appropriate at this time. And that would be for a lot of these issues that we're having technically. We're all seeming to have to go to you, and all the people that would normally be doing AV and work on all this, I don't know if they're sitting on their hands or they're waiting on you as well. When I have my Android phone on and I'm live speaking, I see what's on my screen. If we could lay on the table, this would be my approach of some important numbers, emails, contacts. If you're having problems, get a hold of, so we don't have people putting their hand up to say, hey, I have a problem getting in. You mentioned Slack earlier, and I don't know what you're talking about, but my wife would be all over that at the moment, and she probably would have set a lot of this stuff up ahead of time. I know this is new, and we have a lot going on and not a whole lot of time to do it. And this is going to be a big learning curve, and we're either going to do it all as a libertarian group, or we're going to start spitting at each other and blaming who and that and who's not doing this. I want to lay on the table that on the screen that I have instructions on who I can talk to, who would be available, and what groups we have set up for future notice. Not for future notice. We're having problems right now. We did get an email yesterday saying we are registered for this meeting today. When I click on the link, it takes me to Zoom and it says you got to register. And so I register. It gives me another screen to confirm my registration. And then it gives me something to click on that says the meeting, well, that I have to register. And that would be it. I thank you for your time, and I'll, whoever that wants to work on this on the side, please get a hold of the Idaho people and we'll do what we can.
All right, thank you, Mr. Luoma. Nebraska Delegate James Harold. Go ahead, Mr. Harold.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I'm the delegation chair from the Cornhusker State.
All right, Mr. Harold needs to be promoted to delegation chair. Mr. Deely from Washington. Mr. Deely, you put something in the Q&A. Are you the delegation chair from Washington?
I'm the vice chair. I just wanted to make it known that I was here because I heard this was mandatory. I have nothing further to say. I yield.
Are you a delegate or an alternate, Mr. Deely?
I'm a delegate. I'm a delegate and the vice chair of the delegation.
Okay, we will get your name set up. Thank you. All right, I have Louisiana Delegate Everett Bodine. Go ahead, Mr. Bodine. Mr. Bodine, you have to unmute yourself, I believe.
Sorry, this is not Everett. This is Howard Wetzman. Everett sent out
Dr. Wetzman.
to everyone in Louisiana who was a delegate. And this is the only communication I've received and the only way I was able to get on the call.
Okay. If you did not receive an invitation directly for this, it's because there's not an appropriate email address in for credentialing. And so that's something you want to get with your delegation chair to make sure it gets resolved prior to the actual convention.
Sorry, I actually clarified that last night in a phone call with a staff member from LNC who called because of that, and we cleared it up and
Okay.
thought it was all going to work for today.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. I have a privilege motion. Tennessee Delegate William Helmstetter would like to move to recess for 5 minutes. It would require a second.
How do we second?
I don't really know how to second, but we'll just pretend there was one. Mr. Helmstetter, go ahead.
Yes, that was kind of the point of my motion, Chair. I'm just trying to be helpful and test here. And
Yep.
the second
We'll
thing, what I was thinking
second
about.
real fast. As soon as I said it, 2 people put a second into the Q&A. So
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
I rescind my motion.
Thank you.
So is that how we second?
Yes, I think if you're going to have, if it's a privilege motion that would require a second, then I would say that it needs a second, and then you would put a second into the Q&A. Or if you're a panelist, you could unmute yourself and just say second. I'm going to ask why California Delegate June Jennis keeps raising her hand.
I can't tell you if you don't unmute.
Okay, that's why I'm asking you right now, because your hand keeps coming up.
Are you, oh, I'm unmuted now. Okay. Yeah, I had another question. That's
Well, that you're going to have to get back at the end of the line.
I did several people ago, but I've never, my name has never appeared on the screen. That's, I was about to say personal privilege on that.
Okay, I don't know exactly what's going on. If you lower your hand.
You want me to do that?
Yes, please lower your hand. You should get back into the line.
Now my.
All right, so now if you raise your hand, you should show up in the appropriate order, Ms. Jennis. Go ahead and try and raise your hand again. Yep, now you're in the right spot in line. Perfect. Don't know why that appears to be a glitch. Washington, D.C. Delegate Joseph Bishop Henchman.
I'm a delegation chair looking to be promoted.
All right, we will get you promoted, Mr. Bishop Henchman. Missouri Delegate Bill Slants. Missouri Delegate Bill Slants, you need to log out and upgrade your Zoom software so that you are able to be recognized to speak. Nevada Delegate Jason Smith.
Hello, Mr. Chair. I would like to be promoted.
All right, Nevada Delegate Jason Smith is the delegation chair and will be promoted. Missouri Delegate, or sorry, Mississippi Delegate Danny Bedwell, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself, Danny. There you
Thank
go.
you, Chairman. I would like to be promoted to delegation chair and all around good guy.
I can at least get you promoted to delegation chair. Pennsylvania alternate Chris Olensky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I have a question, and it's for, I'm presuming it's more than just one individual that I'm speaking on behalf of here. They are looking for an invitation. Now, they were not allowed to, or they didn't, for whatever reasons, were not registered for the last trial. And I know that the other invitations and registrations for tonight were automatically generated and sent out to those of us that previously did. They would like to attend, but however, have no way of being able to register. So on behalf of those delegates and alternates, I'd like to find out a way for them to be able to attend.
They are not able to attend tonight's test. If their emails have been fixed in credentialing, they will get an invitation for the next test on Sunday.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Tennessee Delegate Joshua Eagle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You had mentioned earlier that that state chairs were responsible for collecting the votes of their own delegations, and that was kind of in contrast to what I've heard in the past. Could you provide some clarity as to the way the presidential and vice presidential votes are going to be collected?
They'll be collected in the same way that the bylaws require them to be collected, where the delegation chair will poll their delegation and submit them on a written ballot.
Okay. A digital written ballot, I assume, at that point?
A digital written ballot, yes, you'll be allowed to type your writing. We will provide the ability to use things like OpaVote or the voting software that we use tonight to delegations if that's how they choose to ballot. But if a delegation chair chooses to ballot with, you know, all of y'all are in a room and you do index cards, or you go into your own Zoom room where you have a Slack channel, or you do text messaging, or smoke signals, I've heard, are very popular with the California delegation. Whatever is your kind of thing, it is left to the individual state delegation chairs how to ballot their delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Arizona Delegate Howard Blitz, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just to continue that conversation a little bit. How do I, as delegation chair, get information to and from my delegation while we're on the main screen here in the convention? Is there some other screen that I would be needing to go to, or how does that all work?
Yeah, you would need to communicate with your delegation through some other channel. The main screen is just going to be like the main stage at a physical convention. And so to speak with your own delegation, you'd want to use whatever system you use. I know Arizona, we previously used the text messaging system that Mr. Kielski has set up, but we'll also be providing a Slack channel, which allows for communication that way. I believe there was Michigan alternate Catherine Phyllis had a hand up. I know that that person was on deck, and I think the hand went down.
But
oh, sorry, Mr. Blitz, did you have something else?
Yeah. So I'm trying to envision how this is all working while I'm, you know, like we're all watching the main stage. There's going to be something that I've got to use on my screen to communicate with my delegation, getting their votes, communicating with them as far as who's available to vote. You know, maybe I need to change a delegate out and have an alternate come in, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I guess I'll have to set that up. Very good. Thank you.
All right, Michigan alternate Catherine Phyllis.
Hi, I'm not sure if this is maybe because I am an alternate, but I wasn't given the option anywhere to connect by phone audio, which meant when I was on my desktop computer with no microphone, I had no way of even raising my hand and saying that.
It should have
so
been
either-
in the email that you got with the invitation. It should have had both a link to connect
Right.
from your
And
computer as well as
I
your
think I
phone
did
number.
hear some people earlier say the password for whatever reason, that's not even asking for it. So there's no way if you're on like a desktop computer or something to connect to audio.
Yeah, I don't have that answer. Although in the Q&A, California delegate Kevin Moore indicates he may have an answer to that question. Go ahead, Mr. Moore.
Yes, hello. I was actually talking about the previous question about being able to have another way of communicating with delegations. Zoom does support, or at least it claims to support, the ability to join multiple Zoom meetings simultaneously. I personally have not been able to get that to work yet, but I've got to call into Zoom to ask if they can help with that. If not, you'd have to have some other mechanism for doing that, but there is an option for that. If you just look up join multiple meetings on Zoom, there are some instructions on how to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Who said Mr. Chair?
The Alabama delegate, Chair.
Mr. Boyd.
How do we deal with sitting alternates in the place of delegates? And does that need to be registered with the committee or done within our delegation?
So your alternates will be on in order to swap in an alternate for a delegate, you will need to let the credentials committee know who is going to be in and be able to be voting. This is how strict we are about whether or not they can come into the meeting is not entirely clear yet. But if we maintain that the meeting is only for people who are eligible to vote, then we would need to do some procedure to bring people in. If we do it similar to a physical convention, it is up to the delegation chair to keep track of whether or not they're tallying votes from alternates or delegates, depending on who is allowed to vote at the time, and make sure that the tallying for an election doesn't have more votes than are available.
Will we have a real-time chat with the credentialing committee then?
I don't know if you have a real-time chat with the credentialing committee, but your delegation has a certain number of delegates available to you. So if you get more votes than you have delegates, then you need to figure out who has the extra vote.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Florida delegate Denise Rayburn Mascarelli.
Unmute myself. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I seem to be having some technical problems. I received the email with the link to join today's meeting. And like I did the other day, I used my Chromebook and I keep getting the same cycle of pages. Webinar registration approved. I click on the URL. It takes me back to the registration page. I register back again. I cannot seem to get into this meeting on my laptop anymore. So I got in on my phone, but I didn't need a password. I didn't need anything. So I'm not quite sure what the technical problem is, but able to join one meeting without any type of password, and the other one, it continually cycles through a registration page, and then a registration approved page, and then a non-functional URL.
Ms. Rayburn Mascarelli, my wife also has a Chromebook, and she has indicated to me that what you may be able to do as a workaround for your Chromebook, you log into the Zoom application, then you copy the meeting ID, the numeric ID that's in your email invitation, and then try and connect to that meeting directly rather than clicking on the link.
I did.
That should get you in.
It did not.
Okay.
I
Well,
tried
work
that
for
too.
her, but she is also married to me, so
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
maybe
See, I'm
the
not
Chromebook's just cooler.
I'm not an IT person, so I don't know whether this will be a problem again the next time. I had no problem whatsoever on Wednesday logging in, but
Yeah.
this time it's just not working for me here. So, and like I said, I was able to get in on the phone, but I didn't need a password. So
Right.
I could be anybody, delegate,
I'm pretty sure you're
alternate,
you.
John Q. Public. So
You sound a lot like you, though.
I do, don't I?
You do.
Okay.
I believe.
I'm gonna go.
Yeah, we'll keep trying to work with it. We're gonna have another test on Sunday, and we can try and figure out what's going on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. I next have Iowa Delegate Mike Connor.
Yes, Mike Connor, Delegate Chair for Iowa, just asking to be promoted.
Okay, if you can promote Iowa Delegate Mike Connor to be Delegation Chair. Kansas Delegate Ned Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kansas Delegate Ned Kelly. I have a point of information about the emails. A couple of my delegates did not receive emails, even though I had put them, and this I hope is helpful for other states who are having the same problem. So when we got our delegation set, I put everybody's emails into the CRM. But a couple of them had already been in there from years ago. So what I needed to do was change the new emails to their primary email. So check your people, make sure that the email they want to use is listed in CRM as their primary email. That might solve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Oklahoma Delegate Chad Williams.
I think this kind of piggybacks off what Ned was saying. I have an alternate in our Discord chat that was locked out, and we're having trouble to figure out what email is needed to be used to log in. He tried his primary email that's in the Civi CRM, and he's tried his backup, and neither one of those work. So does he use the Zoom account email, or does he have to use his credentials email?
Mr. Chair, can I jump back in because I just had that point of information? Yeah, the primary email in CRM does have to match whatever email they use for their Zoom account profile.
Okay, I'll let him know. Thank you.
Thank you. California Delegate Mark Suarez.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I have a point of information. Considering that the Q&A is for privileged motions only, one of the delegates from my county, Susan Aquino, says she currently does not have audio. She might be on now. I don't know if she's in now, but if you're trying to communicate with her and the Q&A box is only for privileged motions, how does she communicate? Thank you.
It is very difficult to participate in a convention if you don't have audio. The only thing that I can suggest for somebody who has some sort of hard lack of audio capability is they would have to have a way to communicate with their delegation chair, and the delegation chair could relay the information.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. New Jersey Delegate Greg Mele.
Hi, sorry. So one thing just to point out, Mr. Chairman, is when I had the email to confirm this meeting, it gave me the password to sign in. When I did start going into the meeting, it said that it was an incorrect one. So I had to say I forgot my password, and it allowed me to reset to something else. And then I was able to get in, just so you know. The only other thing was it looks like in my taskbar at the bottom, for the first time in a Zoom meeting that I've had, at least, and not that I've had many, but I did not have the mute unmute option there until you just had something pop up when I came up to bat, and it gave me a pop-up to unmute at that point. So is that the way that the meetings will work, where you're controlling the muting and unmuting, or will there be an option for us during the convention?
So for attendees who are not panelists in the webinar format, panelists are able to have their video up, and panelists are able to mute and unmute themselves. Panelists will be limited to delegation chairs, the chair, the secretary, parliamentarian, and whatever assistants, secretaries or assistant parliamentarians or staff members who are facilitating are on stage. For attendees, and this lets us get to that 3,000 limit so that everybody who may need to participate is available. They needed to be recognized in order to speak. If they have a privilege motion, like a point of order or parliamentary inquiry, they have to type it in the Q&A, and then they will move to the front of the queue to be recognized, as Dr. Ahmad is about to be after you are done, Mr. Mellon.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Dean Ahmad has a point of order. Somebody can allow Dr. Ahmad to speak.
Yes,
Go
thank you, Mr. Chairman. The point of order is that when someone has an audio failure, I think that should be a point of personal privilege to report it, and that therefore it would be in order for them to raise it in the Q&A as a privileged motion, as a privileged motion.
It is a point of personal privilege if there is an audio problem. It is not necessarily a point of personal privilege if the person does not have any audio capability due to their end. That is going to be something they're going to have to deal with their delegation chair, because even if I were to recognize them, they don't have audio. I can't hear what they're saying, nor can any other member of the body.
But that's why they should be allowed to make the personal privilege point in the Q&A.
Yeah, but what's the point of personal privilege? How am I resolving their privilege problem? I can't make them have an audio.
Yes, if you're incapable of audio, then you can't. But I was addressing the issue of someone who doesn't know why they're not getting audio.
Yes, if there is an issue where you are unable to participate due to some problem that is resolvable by the chair will address that as the normal point of personal privilege.
Thank you.
Thank you. I next have Michael Vogt from Louisiana, who also has to have his name changed. Go ahead, Mr. Vogt. Are you a delegate or an alternate? Michael, go ahead. And Michael's audio, Michael does have a point of personal privilege. His audio does not appear to be working. He is unmuted on our end, and his audio does not appear to be working. Michael, I believe this is going to be an issue that you're going to have to do some Zoom testing ahead of your next meeting. I cannot fix your audio issue at this point. And so we're going to move to the next person to be recognized. California Delegate June Jenis.
In response to an earlier question, you mentioned the need to whitelist, and I believe it was lp.org. I'm not a big social media person. I never heard that term before until Dan Fishman mentioned it in another communication. Could you explain briefly what that is and why there is a need for it? I'm not blaming anybody, so I don't know why things shouldn't get through.
It is not social media. It is an email issue, and some email accounts or clients block or push into spam emails from certain domains. Whitelisting is where you tell your email provider that if something comes from lp.org, I want it to go to my inbox so that I see it.
Okay, I checked and I am not blocking lp.org, and I have not found anything in spam. Does that mean I really don't need to do the whitelisting, or I should do it anyway?
No, if you are getting the invitations, which apparently you are because you're in this call with us, I think you should be fine and don't need to do anything further.
I'm getting them now, but I wasn't before.
Okay.
I'll find out tomorrow.
All right. New York Delegate Carrie Bittner. Sorry, I have to go ahead, Ms. Bittner.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to test out how it works, make sure I could hear you and you could hear me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I haven't been unmuted. I don't think I'm supposed to do that. I know my hand finally went down, but it didn't.
Yes, I put your hand down and I will mute you now. All right. New Mexico Delegate Tom Mann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the purposes of this meeting, I would like to be upgraded to first class and be put in the private room of captains of the military.
Well, Mr. Mann, we don't have complimentary drinks due to the recession because of the pandemic, but we will make you a delegation chair for tonight.
Thanks.
All right. South Carolina delegate, let me just check. All right, so the slide does say only use Q&A for privileged motions. You don't get to have chat. There is no chat. Anything that needs to be done outside of Q&A needs to be done on another client like Slack or with your text messages, Facebook Messenger, smoke signals. I've heard very popular with certain delegations. Alabama delegate Ollie Reese raises a point of information, which is not technically privileged, but is a question that I will answer live. The approximate end time for that for tonight is going to be 10 o'clock. We're running these about 2 hours each time. That's kind of the limit of everyone's patience. And it's enough that we get good information about how people are interacting with each other. All right, South Carolina delegate Sean Thornton, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'm the delegation chair for South Carolina and would like to be promoted.
All right, we will take care of that. Indiana delegate Jared Hall.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I would just like to be as the Indiana delegate chair.
All right, Indiana delegate Jared Hall will be delegation chair for tonight. Ohio delegate Helen Gilson.
Good evening. I just wanted to let you know, in the spirit of testing, it took 6.5 minutes for my name to appear on the screen of speakers from the point that I raised my hand, and it took a total of 18.5 minutes for my name to actually reach the top.
Yes, but that is not a technical issue. That is a
No.
person issue.
Nope, it's just like waiting in line for the microphone.
Correct. And I think this will be better when we actually are engaged in the business of nominating a presidential candidate, because people will all be focused on trying to do the thing. And we will have done enough of these that more people will be comfortable with the technology, with the tool, and a lot of these simple questions are done. But I appreciate your patience.
Thanks.
All right, Ms. All right, Iowa alternate David Davis has had some issues with password and being kicked out. We are working on fixing technical issues. That's why we are doing this testing. And also that's not a privileged motion. Just a quick reminder for anyone who got on late, the Q&A is for privileged motions only. If you have a point of order, point of information, or a point of personal privilege, type one of those things in the Q&A and you will get recognized out of order. But points of information are not privileged and should not go in the Q&A. You should wait to be recognized. There is exactly one line for the microphone, and Ms. Crawford is putting it up on the screen so everyone can see where they are in line. We'll now go to Missouri delegate Bill Slants. Go ahead, Mr. Slants, you should be able to talk.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the yeoman's work you're doing this evening. I will be the delegate chair for the state of Missouri.
All right, we will get you promoted shortly. Oregon delegate Carolyn Wade.
Am I
Oregon
still muted?
You are now able to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. First, I would like to be promoted. I'm the delegate chair.
Okay.
Second, I'd like to thank you for having only a single line. This is much nicer than discovering that you're standing behind Mr. Starr in line at the microphone. Third, I came in late because I had a significant problem with password, and I'm not sure that I understand if that's being dealt with on a global level for future tests or for the convention in general. Can you address that for me, please?
Yes, so the goal is that because we are doing an electronic convention where you have all of the emails put into the credentialing system ahead of time, we will be able to register people and send an invitation well in advance of the thing happening, so that you should have a direct link to get in, and there shouldn't be an extensive credentialing process. I anticipate that on the Friday evening, the 22nd, credentialing should be relatively simple, where we count the people who have been registered and who have logged into the meeting, and then have that as the original credentials report. So that should go pretty smoothly. Part of the good thing about having these tests, even though we don't get a lot done in each test, is we find out that, you know, somebody has an old email address that they don't check that was actually listed with their delegation chair. This is a way to kind of work out some of those kinks. So that should get resolved, and there will be a Sunday test where we'll see if it goes even smoother. Did that answer all your questions, Ms. Wade?
It did. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Pennsylvania Delegate John Waldenberger, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, my initial request to be recognized is just for curiosity and understanding this different format. I'm not familiar with this particular format of the Zoom call. I guess is this the webinar function?
It is the webinar function that allows us to have up to 3,000 attendees, so that every potential delegate is able to attend and participate. It does not have as many of the features as the meeting function, but the ability for everyone to participate seems to be more important from the feedback we received.
Right.
And that Q&A function that allows you to put a privileged motion in allows people to interrupt if there is something interruptible in a way that we don't have, we don't run into the Zoom hard cap of 1,000 people in meeting mode.
Okay, that helps. I had one other just point of information to let you know.
Sure.
So I did tune in late because I'm also going between 3 other Zoom calls and working right now. But when I went to sign in, it did not require me to input any sort of password this time.
Yeah, we've seen that a little bit, and I think actually the next person in line is going to explain that to us. So we're going to go to California Delegate Tim Ferreira. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I just helped some California delegates get in, and I think I have an answer to all of the password questions. So first of all, if you are clicking on the link that has all of the letters and numbers at the end of it in order to get into the meeting, all those letters and numbers at the end are the password. They're encoded, and so you don't actually have to type the password. So that's the answer to that question. One of the other questions was some people said that their password wasn't working, and one of the individuals I helped get in, the issue there was there are 2 places where you need to enter a password. One is to log into your Zoom account, and one is to log into the meeting. And they were trying to use the meeting password to log into their Zoom account, and they did not remember their password, so they were able to use their forgotten password. That got them into the account, and then they could use the meeting password to get into the actual meeting. So hopefully that is helpful for anyone else that's trying to get some people in, and maybe we can put some directions together for the future emails going out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ferreira. California Delegate Elizabeth Brierly. Go ahead, Ms. Brierly. You have to unmute yourself. Elizabeth Brierly, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, I think I have it now. Is that
You
good?
do. It's so good to hear from you.
All right, thank you. Point of information from the test a couple nights ago. We haven't been in the breakout room tonight for credentialing, and I wanted to bring it to somebody's attention. People were concerned that they didn't have a leave button to return to the main room after being credentialed. And it seemed that when I moved my cursor, when I wasn't moving my cursor, the leave button went away. If I just moved my cursor around, it would pop up again. That may or may not be the problem that others were experiencing. Just wanted to let the right people know about that.
No, I appreciate that. We are in the webinar format tonight, and so the interface is a little bit different. We don't have breakout room capability in the webinar format. There is only one main session, and the leave button that you have right now will actually have you leave the entire Zoom meeting. But this format allows us to have up to 3,000 people attending rather than having the hard cap of 1,000.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Louisiana Delegate Chad Lemoine.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for everyone putting in the work here tonight to make this happen and try to iron out the kinks. I had originally put my name in or raised my hand to find out, because I had a similar question to what I heard someone else ask earlier. I got my invitation, but I also got like a forwarded invitation from one of the other folks in the Louisiana delegation, and I was not sure if I'd clicked my invite link to show up as myself or to show up as them. That was cleared up when I saw my name in the. But I just wanted to kind of. I figured I would stay on to point that out, that that is a potential snag that we need to. And I don't know how you guys are set up to clarify that to make sure that folks are showing up as themselves rather than through forwarded links or anything like that, where you may be logging in with someone else's login and password. And I also had a question about what I know we have there. This is the second, and there's going to be a third on Sunday. Is there any plan for a further test if there are still some kinks that need to be ironed out to make sure that we are ready to go seamlessly into this virtual convention next weekend?
Yeah, so no one should be forwarding anybody's link. The link that you get is your own link. Don't forward it. If you do forward it, something bad's going to happen because someone's not going to be able to get in, whether it's you or the other person. As far as what happens after Sunday, we will evaluate on Sunday based on how that goes, whether or not we've gotten through most of the kinks. If we have not gotten through all the kinks, we have between, Sunday night all the way through until Friday evening to keep working on things, and we will do what is necessary to be a success. I anticipate things will go a lot better when we actually have business to do. I know a lot of people are trying to get comfortable with the software. We're all trying to adapt, and so I appreciate everybody's patience. Did that answer all your questions, Mr. Lemoine?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Connecticut Delegate Rod Hanscom. Mr. Hanscom, you should be able to unmute yourself. Rod Hanscom, you are recognized. There you are. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I actually had nothing to point out tonight. So.
Thank you. Colorado Delegate Alan Heyman. Mr. Heyman, go ahead.
Oh, there we go. Hey, so I just wanted to say I appreciate everything that you guys are doing. It seems like a lot of the problems that are happening are fixable, and that makes me happy. My question was about, I know you're still testing webinar mode, and I don't remember where I read it, but I read something that there's a possibility of doing part of the business in one mode and part of the business in a different mode, depending on what we're doing that day. Is that something you're still considering? And have you made a decision on whether or not meeting mode or webinar mode is working better? I just wanted to see where we're at on that. And yeah, thanks again for everything that you guys are working on.
Yeah, we're testing both because there's different limitations and advantages and disadvantages of both. Anytime that we need to have more than 1,000 people in at the same time, we cannot use meeting mode. It does not support that many people. There are workarounds for that. If we had multiple delegates in one Zoom account, but those workarounds have their own problems because the polling or voting functions would not necessarily work properly where only one account votes. So we appreciate everybody being flexible and patient as we learn these tools, and we'll do what is best for the business that we're trying to do at the time. New Jersey Delegate Daniel Kraus, go ahead.
So I would like to call the orders of the day because it appears we've gone off track from the credentialing. I think that's appropriate at this time.
It's sort of appropriate. We're not really credentialing right now. What we were going to try and get through is some elections, but I'm trying to answer everyone's questions as long as people are trying to be recognized, because if people feel like their questions aren't being answered, there's a type of frustration that comes from that. So people are always free, if their question has already been answered, they can drop their hand and not seek to be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Indiana Delegate Jeanette Jakewish.
Hello, Chairman. First of all, is my microphone working?
It is working fine.
Good. I had problems getting on, and I think it's because I registered on one computer and then tried to log into the meeting on another. I'll try to figure that out. But one thing that
I
confused me
forget how
was,
much sex is in this show.
but when it asked for, totally confabulated me there. But when it asked for my password, I was a little confused because I had just typed in my email and I thought, do they want my email password, my meeting password, or my own personal Zoom account password? So if when, I don't know if you can affect the wording of the login process, but if they could tell you which password they're asking for, it would have saved me, because I got locked out because I kept trying this and that.
We will try and work on that. Thank you very much. Minnesota Delegate Justin Jelinek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Greetings from the land of 10,000 taxes. I just wanted to commend everybody. In this mode, we seem to be leaps and bounds further than we were earlier this week. And I do think the webinar mode, being able to accommodate all attendees at the same time, is a very credible platform for the business of nominating the president and vice president. So I feel a lot better about where we were than a week ago, and I wanted to make sure everybody was recognized for that. And I appreciate being able to see the speakers list and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jelinek. Idaho Delegate Jennifer Luoma. Ms. Luoma, were you still seeking to be recognized? I see the hand is down, so I'm not sure.
Yes. What I was looking at or asking, if we haven't been recognized now that I'm logged into the PC, am I officially recognized?
Yeah, it shows you as Idaho Delegate Jennifer Luoma.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Rhode Island Delegate William Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to share that if you log into Zoom, even if it's not with the email address that you used, you have to be logged in on your computer. It makes for a lot easier. So if we put that in the instructions that you log into your Zoom account before you log into the meeting, it was a lot easier logging in tonight than the last test meeting.
Yeah, and I think that has also helped for some people that are on Chrome, because I think Chrome has issues with that. So definitely, if you can log into your Zoom account ahead of time, I think it makes it simpler, and I appreciate you sharing that with everyone else. I'm going to recognize Arizona Delegate Brandon Slayton. So I'm going to interpret that as a point of personal privilege that he had not meant to put his hand down. Although I don't know if I can find him. Oh, there he is. Go ahead, Mr. Slayton. Go ahead, Brandon. Brandon, you are not muted, so I'm not hearing you though. try it again. Try and unmute yourself, Brandon. Are you speaking, Brandon? Because I'm not hearing you, but it looks like you're not muted. All right, Mr. Slayton, I don't know what the technical issue is, but we're going to move to the next person to be recognized, Massachusetts delegate Ashley Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question is, I know there's another batch of testing on Sunday. Is that next test going to include breakout sessions? And if not, are we going to have more testing where we are going to test other features so that all the delegates can be acquainted with that?
I don't foresee breakouts as being something that's likely. We can use the meeting format for breakouts, but it has a limit of 1,000. So it would have to be some sort of session where we didn't have everybody wanting to participate. The proposed agenda is presidential and vice presidential nominations. And since those are elections, we probably would not be using the breakout functionality, but we may do another test with meeting mode just to make sure that as many delegates as possible are familiar with it, so that we can be able to be as familiar as possible if we need to use it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Maryland alternate Paul Eads.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm new to Zoom and I'm just checking to see if I'm proficient in it. Thank you.
You're doing well, thank you. All right, Ohio delegate Homer Taft.
Thank you, Chair Sarwark. Can you hear me?
I can.
Forgive me, but I had 4 or 5 things. I almost raised a point of order, but it has been raised. But as I understand it, you do have an agenda of some sort, but are these 3 items that are listed actually going to be dealt with tonight or any others?
I would like to get to doing the elections because we wanted to demonstrate some of the balloting software. I was just trying to get through everybody that wanted to be recognized before that. So
goes to my second question.
Sure.
I received a separate link for something regarding voting. Is that the test that would be occurring?
Yes, that is one of the tests, is the voting, balloting ahead of time.
Thirdly, as to the difference between the meeting function and the webinar function, it is my understanding that a number of states are looking at group meetings that might draw us below the 1,000 between delegates and staff. And I can't guarantee that would be all alternates, but would that make a difference as to how we conduct the convention?
It might make some difference. The other thing that has been suggested by some delegations is they may be logged into 2 Zoom meetings, one the webinar for the main session and a second one for their state delegation so that they can have that meeting format with each other.
I do have a point of information on respect to the use of tokens for debate. Would that be appropriate now?
I'm curious, go ahead.
I am wondering whether as we decide to do tokens for debate, whether it's going to be a relatively transparent process where we're going to be able to see where people are so that some of us might decide, whether we're wasting a vote or would be better to give it to a token to someone else.
I don't know if I have that answer right now.
And finally, if you would permit me, I recall at past conventions, the debate for president and for vice president came much later than are scheduled this time. And it seems like they're being scheduled even before the commencement of the convention on Thursday night this time. And I have some concern, particularly this relates to the tokens, but also as to just participation. If we're doing this on Memorial Day weekend, that people may be far more available on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday than they are on Thursday or Friday, particularly at a certain time, Eastern time or any other time. Why are we doing that, or how tied into that, are we? Because it seems to me it's not the best scheduling.
That is a
I can
convention
speak to that.
oversight committee. Go ahead, Ms. Billiou.
Yeah, this is Whitney Billiou. I can speak to that. Well, to part of it at least. One point is the presidential and vice presidential debates are actually outside of convention business, so they do not have to be scheduled during the actual convention dates. Two, with regard to the tokens, they in a real convention where we all meet in person, the tokens are also delivered to a location, usually at the credentials table, and put in a box where nobody can see them anyway. So I'm not really sure that this is any different than with that method, because we still don't necessarily know who's putting their tokens in for which candidate, unless we just talk to each other, which we can still do, I guess. But that system is not any different than before. And with regard to why it was scheduled for the Thursday before the convention, I can't specifically answer that, but I will take your concerns back to the convention committee and let them know.
If I may say, I think it's ill-advised, and particularly when we cannot physically discuss things with each other and collaborate with each other. I think the token process should be far more transparent. I really think, I mean, traditionally the debates have always happened during the actual Memorial Day weekend. And I think pushing everything to where people can't listen to them or where it's way early, particularly with this rushed schedule we're trying to do, is ill-advised.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Taft.
Mr. Chair.
All right, I have a point of privilege from Ashley Shade that if people log out, they cannot log back in. I'm also
fixed that,
seeing
Mr. Chair.
it has been fixed. Okay, so that one will be dismissed. I have a motion to set the time of adjournment. It is presently going to be 10 p.m. Eastern. I have another.
This is Whitney. You're taking me off the list, and my hand was up to speak earlier, and so I don't know if you're. Somebody is taking me off the list, and
I believe you were taking. You appear to be on the list right now. I see you on the
okay,
list.
well, my name was just up at the top, and then it was being removed all of a sudden.
I see it in the same spot that it was before.
No,
right?
no,
Okay.
it's
On the screen share. You should be right after Stephen Nikela.
Yeah, that's not where I was originally. When my hand was up, I was higher on the list, and it looks like my name got added back to the middle now, but I should have been higher on the list when I was trying to speak. When I spoke a minute ago, I was answering someone's question. So I don't know how my name got back on the list, but that's not where it was originally when I first put my hand up. So Stephen was not in front of me.
May I raise a privilege motion?
Who's raising the privilege motion?
Washington Delegate Miguel Duque. Members of my delegation have asked me to call the question. Would that be in order?
It's not really. There's not a question on the table. I'm trying to answer everybody's question. Everyone keeps raising their hand because they want to be recognized, and I'm recognizing everybody in the order that they raised their hand, and I apologize for the people who are falling out of order. I will continue to recognize people and answer questions.
I call the orders of the day.
There are not really orders of the day, Mr. Kelly, but that was a really good attempt.
I call the pretend orders of the day. For the practice, pretend convention.
We can move to voting. There's a real frustration I have right now, because as long as people are in line and wanting to be recognized, I want to recognize them. But at the same time, people are not really being very considerate of others, because everybody's trying to be recognized and we have a very large convention. So we can do this however we want to do this. I know that there were people who were asking, who have questions about things like voting, who have questions about things like getting in. I know there's a bunch of other people that seem to want to tell me how they feel about things or tell me about the problems that they're having today. And those are all interesting things too, but may not be interesting to everyone. So I'm going to go through the privilege motions in the Q&A. We're going to make sure none of those are real important. And then I think we can start going through some of the voting and how that worked in order to do that. If Mr. Olensky continues to abuse the Q&A, Mr. Olensky will not be allowed to use the Q&A. Mr. Olensky, is that clear? Thank you. I have a point of personal privilege for Ms. Gilson from Ohio. Harold Thomas, delegation chair, it appears that has been done. Mr. Thomas, you appear to be a panelist to me. I have a point of order regarding Ms. Bilyeu's order in
Thank
the
you.
lineup. I think that's also already been addressed to the extent it can be.
No, because I was taken off the list and moved basically to a lower spot. So
That's
is
not
that how you
actually a point
addressed
of
it?
order. I mean, where do you think you were?
Well,
Which person were you in front of or behind?
Can I explain?
Please.
Sure.
So Whitney, when you answered the question about the tokens, I put you at the top because you were answering the question about the tokens. The place you are lower was the place that you were originally. You were behind a lot of the attendees who had raised their hand before you. But I had put you at the top when you were speaking.
Thank you.
All right.
This is ridiculous.
So I can continue to move through all the people who have their hands raised, or we can move into the voting. I'm going to just keep going through the people whose hands are raised because everyone else before them got to be recognized. And so everyone after them will get recognized as well. So we'll go to Michigan Delegate Scotty Bowman.
Hello. Waiting for, oh, I see. I don't have a picture. Okay. Well, anyway, I had two things. First of all, with the tokens, the candidates always knew how many tokens they had because they could go and collect them, or people would literally hand them directly to the candidates. So it seems to me it'd be appropriate for the candidates to know the tally of the tokens. So if they wanted to answer the question, hey, do you have enough tokens yet? They could answer yes or no if they wanted to. That's how it was actually before. On another matter, at the last practice convention we had a situation where I could not get in for hell or high water. I mean, I was trying to enter forms and all this stuff. I'll say as soon as I clicked the link today, it brought me in with my title, with my name and with my delegation listed right in front. It was beautiful. Is that the method that we're going to have going into the real convention?
That is the goal. I have a point of order from Nebraska Delegate Scott Zimmerman, who wants to adjourn. I am going to rule that to be dilatory, since we are not going to stop this just because someone's not having fun. They can leave. Missouri Delegate Court Gus Tiefenthaler.
Hey, Mr. Chair. This is delegate and local candidate from Missouri, Court Gustav Tiefenthaler. I wanted to ask a question real quick. I got an email earlier of a link to voting for delegate of president and vice president, and it said something about a password. Could you please elaborate on that? I'm not sure. I didn't really get a password in the thing, I don't think, in the email.
In the email for registration for this, the link has the password embedded in it. And so that's how you got in, and that's why your name has already your identity in it.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Pre-credentialed. You're very welcome. California Delegate Joe Dean. Go ahead, Mr. Dean.
Well, hello. So first, there seems to be some problem with the delegate representation since it says I'm from Missouri. I don't know how that happened.
That's a typing error, Mr. Dean.
So there's actually two different queues. There's the real queue that somebody's looking at, and then this is a copy of it. It's being created by hand.
It is being put on the screen by Ms. Crawford from Massachusetts as a way to help the delegates know who is being recognized.
Well, I think that is very useful. Thank you for doing that. But it would be helpful if you could explain at some point, not necessarily right now, how that's happening, because those of us who are not panelists have no idea what is visible to you. And I'm guessing that Chris Crawford has a view in which she can see a different queue and she's just copying. But anyway, next question, next point. I have two other points. They're not very long. One is about the password, people being confused about passwords. I was extremely confused two days ago. and never got in because I didn't understand which password to use. And the reason I was so confused is because the confirmation message that gives us the link also gives us a password. It says password : live free, which apparently is just some sort of canned thing that's stuck in there and isn't something you need to use anywhere. But because it's there, and if people are not familiar with Zoom, it never occurred since I did not previously have a Zoom account. I didn't even remember the Zoom account as a password. And that's what you have to use, is your Zoom password. So having that line in there that has an irrelevant password is probably contributing to a lot of people's problems. My third point is about the voting system. I, and I assume many other people, got a sample ballot today, which I answered. And somewhere in there was an idea that we were going to find out how it went today at tonight's meeting. I don't know exactly where. I understand you would really like to get to actually using it, but if we don't get to that, could we at least have some kind of report on how that worked, how well it worked, how many people responded, and so forth? Thank you.
Yeah, so I explained how things were working at the outset of the meeting. A lot of people took time getting in, and I haven't been able to keep repeating it. We will get to that voting. More and more people get themselves into this queue, and I keep recognizing.
No, my question was not about the voting during the meeting. I assume you're going to try to do one if you have time during the meeting.
We'd love to. Even
if we don't get to that, can you just give us a summary of what happened? There was a voting period like 2 hours in the middle of the day that closed. Can you give us a brief report, like how many people responded? Were there problems with it? Let us know how it went before we go into trying it again in real time.
How about around 9:30, I'll ask Mr. Fishman to walk us through that.
Okay.
Okay. Ohio Delegate Steve Perkins.
Yes, this was a mic check only. Everything looks good. Thank you.
Okay. Michigan alternate Catherine Phyllis.
So I troubleshooted my own issue earlier of not being able to connect through the audio like I normally do. It turns out the participant ID you need to do that is only available to panelists. So using the webinar format, attendees will not be able to raise their hand and then speak using a phone audio.
Oh, no.
That's interesting, because how did you, so you troubleshooted,
I
so
spent a lot
you're
of time
not
on
in
the
my
Zoom
phone right
website.
now?
Why can't I'm connected over Wi-Fi right now
Okay. Okay.
with like just like a Zoom app.
We'll try and troubleshoot that in the future. Florida Delegate Stephen Michaela. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just FYI, I was in line up further and then my name disappeared. Then I ended up back in line on the list. I don't know what happened there, but just to be aware of. And the quick question I have is, I know there's some folks out there that are couples and they're using the same Zoom account to log in. Now, do they need to be on separate devices so that they're properly credentialed, or will the OPA email for ballots just be sent out to everyone regardless? So what needs to happen there?
Any emailed balloting system that we use or a state delegation decides to use will go to the email and be available for anyone with that email. If they are going to be participating in the meeting and recognized to speak, they're going to need to alternate in some way. If a state delegation is doing balloting by just polling people, you can do that however you do that. I know some members of the New Hampshire delegation are planning to all be in the same larger office. So it's flexi-bendy however you want.
Okay, understood. We'll be using the national service for OPA vote, so we'll be good there. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fishman, can we do some stuff with the voting?
We can. I'm going to share the screen. So the speaker list is going to go away, but it's not being erased.
It's still there. It's just, we're going to look at Mr. Fishman's screen.
That is correct.
Go ahead, Mr. Fishman. And I'm going to step away while Mr. Fishman gets that set up.
All right. So I am assuming that you all can see my screen now? If a state chair could tell me that they're seeing the election buddy screen.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, we got it.
Thank you very much, guys. So this is the vote that went out earlier. I've been evaluating a lot of different products. OPA vote has a major failure in that it does not allow write-ins, which, you know, we use for a bunch of different things. So to that end, I think Election Buddy is the way we want to go. This is the vote we had for the greatest libertarian author. Now, you might recall in the question, I said use last names only. Election Buddy is not bad about putting things together, but obviously if you don't get it, if it doesn't match, it's not going to go. So Rothbard won. However, you can see there's actually a Murray Rothbard up here. And if we were evaluating this in a real situation where people were free-formed, we would put this together and somebody would evaluate intent and put that stuff together. The next question, the best thing on the baked potato, butter won pretty overwhelmingly, but as you saw, we had specific choices and we allowed write-in. So in the previous one, it was entirely a write-in, which as you might recall is the way that we actually do the presidential nomination process. Anybody can write in any name that they want for the presidential nomination. This one, best thing on a baked potato, that's some choices and we allowed to write in. Butter, unsurprisingly, won, but a lot of other votes in the process. And then really the shocker for me, the at-large cereal race, oatmeal. Oatmeal won at 160 votes. I expect this to be the new pineapple pizza question for the Libertarian Party. But as you guys recall, in at-large races, I believe we require a certain threshold as well as a number of votes. Oatmeal only got 12%. So we would have the ability to send this out with some people eliminated, but this was a large scale approval voting and it seemed to work very well. So I'm going to briefly go through and demonstrate the process of setting up a new election. So here's a new election. I'm going to do it live. I'm just going to do a quick election vote. I'm going to call, do you approve the credentials report? Going to be very controversial. Here it goes. I'm going to start it right now. And you guys are all going to get emails about this. So you will be able to vote. Save and continue to ballot design. Obviously, most of these we'll have done a little beforehand. This would be a simple yes, no. One of the things that's really good about Election Buddy too is that it has a mode just for large meetings. So they actually have a mode for amendments, appeal, ruling of the chair, stuff like that. So it's pretty fancy. And I talked to a salesperson today and they're going to cut us a pretty good deal. Here we go. We're done. Continue to the voters notice. We're going to send emails. I'm going to email a receipt to each of you. This is what it's going to look like. Go to the voter list. Use a voter list from a prior election. I'm going to use this one. So you guys should get most of that email. And validate the list quickly. And these are sort of the steps that I have to go through. To make a long story short, you guys see the rest of the stuff that's going on here. I'm going to blow through these a little bit. And here we go. And I'm not going to put that stuff in front of you guys, but if we were going to put a vote like that, you guys would all get a list of this and you would be good to go. Oh, wait, I can do this. And now you guys should look in your email and you probably have some votes coming in the next moment or so, and you can vote on that. So that is the voting process. I wanted to raise one other thing before I come back, Mr. Chair. Peter Everett from Massachusetts raised a point that when you first get to Zoom, there's a button that says, test your microphone and camera. Everybody should do that. You will be able to see whether or not your microphone is working. You will be able to see that your, whether or not your camera works. And you'll be able to hear back and forth too. So you'll know whether or not your audio is working. And that will save the questions when you get into the meeting. Can you hear me? Is my microphone working? Stuff like that. And that is the end of everything that I have to demo.
All right. If you can switch your screen back to Ms. Crawford's screen. I just got my vote. I think everybody else probably got theirs.
If some people didn't get the vote, then they weren't, the vote and the invitation to this meeting went out according to what the list was last night at 10 o'clock. If your chair did not get you on or you didn't get these votes, you need to check with your chair. Your chair can say, this is what your email address is, and then they can check with me and see if we sent to that email address or not.
All right. So if you didn't get it, it's because there's an issue with that. Ms. Crawford, are you sharing your screen again?
Yes,
I'm
you
not
should see
seeing it. Why am I not seeing it?
Go up to I don't know what to tell you. If you're not seeing that, try stopping your camera. Anything?
Nope.
The next speaker is Whitney, Texas delegate Whitney Bilyeu.
Go ahead, Ms. Bilyeu. You have to unmute yourself, Whitney.
Yeah, I appreciate that we have a volunteer willing to keep track of the speakers. That is super helpful as long as we can, make sure that it is accurate. My concern is during an actual convention, the convention secretary is responsible for keeping the motions projected up in front of everybody to see. Since Ms. Crawford is not the convention secretary, what is going to be the procedure for having both of those things on the screen at the same time while the convention secretary is doing their job?
Well, I'm not sure I quite get your question, because isn't the proposal that we are only doing elections?
Mr. Chair,
Motion would be up. Go ahead, Ms. Carlos.
I mean, just in general, I believe Ms. Crawford is doing an excellent job, but I do need to object. I'm the convention secretary and I have absolutely zero role on this test. And I think that's highly inappropriate and somewhat disrespectful, to be honest with you. I need the practice as well. And when it comes to elections, certain results and things do need to be projected by me. And I would appreciate the practice, though without a doubt, Ms. Crawford is doing an excellent job, but I must object. I'm the convention secretary and I'm getting all kinds of messages asking people what my role is exactly here. And I would like to be able to do my job. So I asked for Sunday if I could take over these duties, please.
Get with Mr. Fishman and we can arrange that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
So to finish my question, Mr. Chair, you said that the agenda is only to elect or to do the nominations. As of now, that's what the agenda says, but we all know that there are going to be other motions made, and there needs to be the delegates need to be able to see those motions on the screen as they happen, like agenda changes, for example. If those occur, the convention secretary needs to be able to project them for the benefits of all the delegates. So hopefully for Sunday, as you guys just worked out, that'll be something that she can do.
Hopefully.
I hate to think that she would have to keep track of all these speakers, because that's not her job, but Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Tennessee Delegate Joshua Eagle. Mr. Eagle, you should be able to make yourself be able to speak, I think, unless you bailed, may have bailed. Do not see him in the list. California Delegate Kevin Moore. Also, no, there you are. Go ahead, Mr.
Unmute
Moore.
myself. Okay. Yes. Hello. I saw that we already went through some voting actions. I was going to bring a motion for us to use to try out the voting if it's appropriate to do so. If not, we can just move
on. What kind of voting? We just did a ballot just on a pretend credentials report that you should have gotten in your email. Is there some other kind of voting you wanted to try?
No, nothing really different. That's just what I had my hand raised for. I just got done with feeding my kid dinner. So,
okay.
Yeah, stepping down. Thanks.
All right. New York alternate Karen Thompson.
Hi, I was just wondering, given the tumultuous weather we're having across the nation, do we have a contingency plan if regions don't have power and Wi-Fi connectivity during the actual voting?
If they have phone, they can phone in.
Okay.
Utah Delegate Rob Latham. Go ahead, Rob. Mr. Latham, you are able to speak, but we cannot hear you. Mr. Latham going once. Oh, you're on the phone. Can you give me the last four of your, we haven't even identified all the phone people. So what area code are you in, Rob?
I think he's saying that he's on the phone.
All right, just a second. Go ahead, Mr. Latham.
There we go. I can hear you. You can hear me now.
Yeah.
Okay. And thank you to you and Mr. Fishman for his demonstration of Election Buddy. And I'll share that I received a voter verification code, a ballot, I voted, and I received a receipt for my vote. And this next question, well, I have three. Mr. Dean represented this a bit on the password. I'm just wondering if in the form email that can be sent out, that can just be omitted, because that is confusing to some folks who are not familiar with Zoom. Second, and I ask this kind of in the, again, the white hat hacker penetration tester spirit, noticing that you are continuing to recognize raised hands. If one or more delegates wish to delay the conduct of business during the online convention, would raising one's hand to pose a question be an effective way to accomplish that? And while you mull your answer to that, I would echo the recommendation to delegates that they explore alternative channels to coordinate during the online convention, such as Facebook or Slack. And I see that my delegation chair has sent us a link to do that. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Yes, delegates can delay the proceedings by getting up to the microphone when they don't actually have a lot to say, as we have seen demonstrated time and again. Tennessee Delegate William Helmstetler. Go ahead.
Point of information. So when we have these votes, which worked great, and I wanted to say thank you for doing all this and putting up with us. There's no calling of question or parliamentary procedure at that point. The vote's done, right?
That's
or
correct.
Is it going to be ranked?
Well,
is it going to be ranked with delegates eliminated or nominees eliminated along the way?
So we do rounds of voting if we're doing president and vice presidential, or anything that requires anything that's done by rounds, which I think is just president and vice president. Maybe
so just like a live convention.
just like a live convention. So
Perfect. Thank you,
some
Chairman.
things go faster, some things go slower. If you're using some sort of email system to enter the vote, it's faster than entering in tallies from written index cards. And it would get to the secretary faster because we would probably use some sort of linked spreadsheet. But obviously the software makes some other things go slower because there's one line for the microphone. South Dakota Delegate Carl Abernathy, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I've got to say, I have witnessed to the most unprofessional, against every form of the bylaws we stand for, and the way you have handled yourself and treated people throughout all of these tests and proceedings have proven to me that this is not the proper format to hold a national convention. And I guess if I had a question, it would be, when is the appropriate time to push forward the Oklahoma resolution to censure you for this misconduct?
I believe the Oklahoma resolution's been sent to the email list. So
I'm asking, sir, when can we expect that to be on the agenda?
When somebody moves to add it to adopt the agenda.
I move to adopt the Oklahoma resolution, and I move to censure the chair.
Is there a second? Dies for lack of a second.
Right, and that's why this is
Delegate Nathan.
How do we second again?
Well, you could just say second. Still dies for lack of a second.
Or Q.
Right, because everybody's muted. You
Or
realize
we
that,
said
right?
Q&A for seconding.
Yeah, we had Q&A for seconding.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Harlos.
would such a motion be in order during a test meeting?
Probably not, but Mr. Abernathy seems angry.
Well, I'm just asking.
Not angry, sir.
because-
Just disgusted with the process. Disgusted how you treat people over the internet. And this would never go down in a real convention like that. And anyone that's actually trying to fool themselves to think that this is a legitimate, honest process is only making discredit upon this party. And again, I go back to, this has been a rush to a technocracy. The both of the two-party duopoly, the Republicans and Democrats, are having in-person conventions. This is a joke. This was a rush. This was against the bylaws. And the way the chair's treating this is the absolute most disgusting process out of this all. And if you're sitting there thinking to yourself that we all can't watch this, I've tried for weeks to get in on this just to be able to voice my concern. So today's the first time I've been able to say anything. And by the way, I was muted this whole time. So how am I supposed to second while my hand's muted? And then you say, oh, well, you can just use the chat. Well, obviously, if there was anybody in Oklahoma that put forward the resolution itself, I would have a second. So again, this is just a test, but I assure you, Mr. Chairman, on convention day, it's a very real motion with a very real second. And I digress my point.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Anything further, Mr. Abernathy?
No, I digress my point. You need to go. Josh Smith, 2020.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Williams, go ahead.
Mr. Abernathy, that motion to take up the resolution needs to come up in either the LNC meeting or in the actual convention, not here.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Washington Delegate Nathan Deely. Mr. Deely. Sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Deely.
Mr. Chair, in light of your entertaining a lengthy and prolific host of questions, feedback, and comments, and in light of the recent motion, I would like to move that we suspend tonight's meeting on schedule, 10 o'clock Eastern and 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock Pacific time.
I think that's the plan right now. I'll keep going through questions as people have them until over the next 11 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Deely. New York Delegate Sean Cahill.
Yes, thank you. I have two quick points. One is I know that it's not required to have a separate channel for the state delegation chairs, but I highly encourage every state delegation chair to set something up to basically mimic the banter that would happen at any close table that you would have in a fiscal convention. Likewise, I would encourage, as far as running the meeting in a webinar format, perhaps it would facilitate the proceedings to have that just set up for the delegation chairs, because we spent quite a lot of time in the beginning of this simply having people be recognized just to be promoted, when that could probably be done via other channels similar to how discussion is supposed to take place among state delegations. Thank you.
Yes, so we will be facilitating, I believe, a Slack channel that different states can have a channel set up on the Libertarian Party's national Slack account that will allow state delegations to use a channel and try and make that easier regarding the closed table. Regarding the setup to make sure that delegation chairs are set up to be panelists, I would encourage that on the next Friday evening, and actually at the next test, we typically open up the Zoom room about a half hour before the scheduled start time. That's a good time to get people set up and get people promoted to panelists so that we don't have to take the time. Shifting to the Q&A for privilege motions, I have a point of order from Mr. Dean, who asks whether or not we have a quorum. I can tell you that I have 333 participants right now, 303 as attendees and 30 as panelists. And at any time, you can also ask your delegation chair if they are connected, they can also see that information. I have a point of privilege from Ohio delegate Helen Gilson, asking how long do the delegates have to take this abusive behavior. I believe the person who had his comments is done speaking, and it was behavior directed at the chair, and the chair is the one who typically takes that. Seconding is privileged, Mr. Bowman, and I see all the seconds from the people who wanted to have Mr. Abernathy be able to make his point, which I think he got to do. Daniel Kraus from New Jersey asks how long until we get results. I'll request results on that vote from Mr. Fishman at around 9:55 to make sure we can see them before we adjourn at 10. Mr. Fulner, that's a request for information that's not actually privileged. You can ask me later. Craig DaCosta, Hawaii delegate, point of personal privilege. The chair is doing the best he can with what we've got, and this is why we're practicing, so we perfect it before the 23rd. Thank you, Mr. DaCosta. Mr. Bowman brings up that failure to acknowledge a second would be a point of order, but he did get a second and he was allowed to speak anyway.
Objection there. He did get a second in the Q&A. He got multiple seconds.
And I let him speak. So even if I had not acknowledged the second, I did allow him to speak as though he had the second.
Shouldn't we be debating the motion though?
It's not really, there's no motion.
I mean, fair. I'm trying to figure this out too. So I get you. Like, you know, and it doesn't mean anything anyway, but I just want to, I want to test something in this, you know, I want to get to something.
So tonight, what we were trying to get to is voting, because this is the format that we're going to use for elections, because it allows all of the people who'd want to participate in an election. So we're not really doing a lot of debate here. It's a difficult format for the debate. Dr. Ahmad has a point of order and suggests the lack of a quorum. I see a quorum. And if you want to raise and appeal the ruling of the chair on that, you can. Ohio delegate Patrick Glasgow has a motion to adjourn. I'm going to rule that out of order at this time, because it would be an adjournment for a Zoom meeting like this would dissolve the body.
I have a point of order. This is Whitney Billiou.
ahead,
Earlier on the meeting, you said multiple times that the Q&A was not for points of information, yet you already read some of them. So are you going to stick to that or not? Because you've been reading some things that
did I read, Ms. Billiou? What point of
Something
information
about
did I read?
something about the chair doing the best he can, and we've never done this before,
That
and
was
that's
a
why
point
we're
of personal
practicing
privilege.
and all that.
It was a point of personal privilege.
Okay, I just want to make sure that everything you're reading is only points of order, since that was the rule.
That was a point of personal privilege.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We're going to adjourn at 10. People don't have to keep putting it in the Q&A that we're adjourning at 10. It's 5 minutes away. Mr. Fishman, you can put up the results of the vote.
All right. Can people see my screen? State chairs?
Yes, we can see it, or I can see it.
Yes.
So 211 to 78 votes approved the credentialing report.
Okay.
One notice is undeliverable. So somewhere in my queue, somebody has an email address that's bouncing. I will hunt them down.
Good. Okay, let's see if we can switch back to Ms. Crawford's screen. See, that switchback doesn't want to work right.
That was me stop sharing. Now she's sharing.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I think, had I already heard from Mr. Cahill or no? Mr. Cahill, had I already recognized you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Louisiana Delegate Everett Bodine. Go ahead, Mr. Bodine.
Hello.
Go ahead. I can hear you now, Everett.
No, this is Michael Vogt. I don't know why I'm coming up on Everett Bodine's.
Probably because somebody is sharing links around they shouldn't be sharing. You should be getting an email directly to your email, and then you would pop in as yourself. But if Everett forwarded you his email, you would log in as him.
That's why I came up under Everett, and that's why I couldn't see my name before. So at least
Correct.
my microphone's working.
It is. I'm so good to hear your voice. All right. I'm going to go on to this. You're welcome. Montana Delegate Francis Went. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to direct our attention to the agenda that was proposed and never adopted, and the multiple requests that were time certain at 10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I hereby I acknowledge that everyone has a right to be recognized, but at this point we do not have agenda, and I thus move to adjourn this session.
We could wait for 3 minutes, Mr. Went.
Then I move to adjourn at time certain 10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
That's what we're going to do. We're going to get through as many people as we can get through. All right. Pennsylvania alternates. Sorry. I have Michigan Delegate Scotty Bowman. Go ahead, Mr. Bowman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm seeing some severe problems with this, and I think it is important to have a practice, and I'm seeing some problems come out of this practice. We had a motion that was seconded, and what you did acknowledge it eventually, but it never followed the proper process where a motion gets seconded and then there is a discussion and so forth, moving toward a vote on that motion. None of that happened. The second thing I noticed is after the vote on whether or not to approve the credential report, I put in, and I believe it would have to be a privileged motion because otherwise I think it would become moot if it didn't come up until 5 people later for division. And I assume that was privileged. Perhaps you can explain how it works if we have to do division on a vote.
Well, the division is already done. We have the yeas and the nays when we use software voting. The numbers are already there.
Do we know who voted how?
We could get that information. It's in the system.
I can share that information if you'd like.
I mean, we don't need to at this point, but a division would be, We have the yays and nays automatically, Mr. Bowman.
My point is it possible if we weren't going to spend an hour on it, that he could sit and read the names right now if he wanted to?
What do you mean list it and read the names?
Well, I mean, when we have actual division, you physically have people, standing up saying, all the ayes stand up and they count down 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on.
Yeah, but one of the advantages of the software is I can actually count. The software gives us a count. So we don't have to have people count off. It tells us how many people are on each side of the question immediately.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Harlos.
I can't type in question and answer, so I apologize. But an accurate count is not the only reason to call for division. Under Roberts, a member can call for division if they do not believe a representative number of the assembly has voted. So I don't think the polling, that excellent, I love that software, by the way, but I don't think that software really answers the division question in full.
No, I appreciate that opinion. That opinion, I disagree, because the software tells us how many people voted.
This
Who was
is
asking to be
Robson.
Yes, Ms. Robson.
My question is, wasn't it already discussed that all voting would be done by delegation? So this is kind of, is it not the delegations that report their vote totals to the secretary? And is it not the delegations that do their vote?
Yes, that is how it is done.
So the test is to do something that wouldn't necessarily be the bylaws. Is that correct?
No, that is incorrect. If California, for example, has a large delegation and wants to poll their delegates using this voting software, you would want to be familiar with being able to use it so that you could get that vote from the large delegation quickly, then fill it into the tally sheet and submit it to the secretary as required under the bylaws.
Point of information, rising votes do not go through delegation chairs.
Yes, but we were looking at balloted votes. So we are past 10 o'clock.
I appreciate it.
What was that?
I said, thank you for that answer. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. We are past 10 p.m. This meeting, such as it is, will be adjourned. And I appreciate everyone taking the time. It was instructive, and I think we've learned some things. And we will be doing this again on Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. If you have direct feedback regarding how this went, please feel free and share it with Mr. Fishman. And we will keep getting better at this as we move forward. Everyone have a great night. Thank you for your time and your patience and your participation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.